Welcome back to another episode of Fortitude Radio. As you guys know, we have our resilience workshop being put on by three of the dopest people I've had the opportunity to meet in the last couple of years, Mr. Aaron Giannetti, Mr. Mark England, and the man today, Mr. Brandon Powell. Brandon, how you doing today, brother?
Doing well, Cody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you for carving out the time. You're a busy man. You're hitting the workshop circuit right now, so you're teaching everybody the good word of the Wim Hof method, yeah?
Right. That is a big part of what I do is spread the word of Wim.
I love it. That's a great lead into our kind of first topic. I think one of the values of having you on this podcast before we have the workshop is to give people a good idea of the who you are, what you do, that.
Well, so I am primarily a self-defense coach. That's what I do. I teach self-defense and many formats in order to, create self-optimization in people, and that means a lot, but we can unpack that. But ultimately, it's self-defense for self-empowerment, and so the tools that I've accumulated over the years, I feel are very effective ones that you can have a deep, direct experience with that will really give you a sense of, learning a deep skill, something you can carry with you and then ultimately, have or give its results. So that's what I would say, that's the primary practicing that I do and what I teach. And then there's this common thread that runs through it all. Like I was saying, it's self-defense, but it's really it's optimization, because all the things that I train, though they have different effects for different people, I really do believe that if you immerse yourself in these practices, that what you get is a deep relationship, like symbiotic relationship, where the arts really enhance your lives. They really bring a deeper sense. And so, that's what I'm up to, man. I'm always looking for, anything that I think that can fit into this modality, but it's really more of a whittling down. Like I find what I think really works, and we put it to the fire. And similar to the Wim Hof method, it's everything that I do is tested and proven, and so that's what I'm up to, man.
That's awesome. Going back to your self-defense and personal defense, Prag, you have a dojo in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's accurate?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What kind of do you guys have specific classes? What do you teach there?
Yeah, so my dojo is primarily a Brazilian jiu-jitsu dojo. I spent the last 2 years training in the art of jiu-jitsu. I am a second degree black belt under an international Brazilian jiu-jitsu team called Revolution BJJ team. And we're a Carlson Gracie affiliate in that sense, where our lineage goes back there to the original essence of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so we have a dojo that runs Jiu-Jitsu programs. We do kickboxing and we do strength and conditioning, and I run workshops out of there as well from time to time. Most of my workshops are done in transit. I'm moving around, traveling, going to different gyms or different facilities. And I work in the corporate world as well. And so I take my stuff to office buildings. I mean, we get it in everywhere, man. You'd be amazed. And where I can build an ice bath is what I'm trying to say. But we do in my dojo specifically those programs. I just integrate all my stuff together in there, but primarily it's jiu-jitsu. And the reason is because I really believe that jiu-jitsu offers you a type of training that you can engage in, daily for the most part, and get great benefits from. You're building skill, so you're taking something really with you, a real skill set that is I would say science based, meaning that the what we're doing is very technically oriented, and then you have so really it's approachable by anybody. That's kind of what I'm saying. Because it's the essence of a true martial art is that the smaller, weaker person can overcome the bigger, stronger person with solid technique. So we're teaching the true, I believe, essence of the art. And it's something that you can practice all the time. And the training is very addictive. You get in and you start doing, start having rolling sessions all the time. And that's our sparring. So when we're sparring, that's what a lot of people get really deeply, intimately connected to. Jiu-jitsu is not something you can do alone. So you have to build community and camaraderie and all of these different aspects that I think really just keep pulling people back. And it's why it has such the momentum that it does as a martial art. So many people train in this particular art. And so we're doing a lot of jiu-jitsu. We do a good bit of boxing. I have a background in boxing, and then we do these internal systems, these things that what I'm interested in is definitely the physical aspect of self-defense. Like just on a primary level, I want to teach people how to really defend themselves physically. But then there is an internal aspect that connects to, and what I teach is breathing and movement. So what I'm interested in is helping people optimize themselves by keeping themselves safe, effectively defending themselves from themselves. Don't put yourself in a situation to where, let's say maybe we try to teach people better nutrition. That's something that I don't dig in too much to, but I do a little bit. And when you're teaching somebody, you have the option to eat good or eat bad. People can choose to do one or the other. And if we can just lay the groundwork for why people should eat good, that's I think a good lesson. In movement, a lot of people are unaware that the way that they move can be detrimental. And breathing is the exact same thing. People don't realize that you can have or hold poor breathing patterns that will negatively affect you throughout everything that you do. So we're interested in helping people recode themselves, because I do believe nature provides, and we have nature gives us life in the sense that we're breathing without the need to think about it, right? So we're going to exist in that way, but we have the ability to optimize. We have the ability to at the very least just get the best out of what our capabilities are, and so that's what I'm interested in helping people with is both the internal and external side of what I consider to be self-defense at my dojo specifically.
I love that you use the word optimization, and you used it frequently. This is an area that I don't imagine a lot of practitioners in performance and fitness are spending time, effort, energy on. I think of it like with breathing specifically. I think of it like running. One day we all just kind of started running. No one really ever told us how. No one ever coached us up on how to do it well, right? We all just kind of run. Some people, like if they sought out a coach or if they had track, whatever, right? But most people just do the thing and haven't been taught how to optimize, like you said, and how to do it really, really well, how to use their breath for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a deep aspect of of everything. So, you know, I believe that pretty much everything comes out of the primary desire to survive. You know, I mean, this is where the reason we had to run was either we were running from something or we were running to something. You know what I mean? And so the push, you know, the drive to move and forward locomotion that's our primary drive. You know, we're designed to move forward. And I think this means a lot, not just physically, but mentally as well, right? You know, we're designed to move forward, and nature gives us a channel to flow in. You know, we're here, we're living our lives while we're here, and you know, nothing is guaranteed except, you know, in order to stay alive, you need that next breath. You know, and then you gotta fuel your body. You know, I mean, if you look back at the ancient hunters. The persistence hunters that used to, you know, basically as a human, and it's interesting you brought up running, we are able to run longer distances than any other animal, right? You know, we have that potential to run hundreds of miles, you know, in a given couple of hours, really. You know what I mean? Like we could, in 36, 48 hours, cover a lot of terrain if we were, you know, so inclined and conditioned. And you know, other animals can't do that. So we would run them down, right? We would run animals down through persistence. And, you know, one of the big things is we as a, you know, let's say primitive man couldn't get injured. Getting injured meant death. You know what I mean? And you would witness that, you would see that, you know, and so we couldn't live in a world where we have ACL shreds and, you know, things where our Achilles are going to blow out, our calves are going to blow out. You can't have these types of injuries. We couldn't have hip surgery, you know, back then. I mean, there was just the need to have a strong body, which I believe is provided by nature. And I also believe that with living in the right environment, under the right people, your optimization would be passed down through heritage, through an inherent or an innate, basically teaching of just your genetics, learning from other genetics. You know what I mean? You're witnessing your family move well, so you know how to move well in the bush, right? And I mean, this is how we live forever. That's why I bring it up, and I think it's very important that we consider it. But what's really happened is people have gotten too comfortable in their life, and these comforts, these types of this moving away from living in a harder nature and trying to basically act like it's not there, through creating false environments, through just relinquishing the need for to engage in let's say running. How many people really run these days? So that whole thing with lifestyle dictating, like let's say sitting at a desk, this idea like all of these things occurring, have led us into what I would say is a compensatory way of existing, where we no longer have to tap into the primitive needs unless we so choose, right? And that's not always the case, but in first world country like we live in, it absolutely is the choice. And this is why we see the human form changing, and people's, basically a lot of people's non-engagement in the physical world, right? So this is like the conundrum to me. It's like, okay, is there a truth behind, our, like, let's say, is there a way to prove, is there a truth that says there is sort of an overall optimizations for all humans? So in other words, if we lived closer to nature in the way that our ancestry did, would these traits come back to us? and the needs, because from our crawl to our walk to our jump to our throw, everything that is necessary for survival and in nature, I believe is deeply rooted and connected to these movement forms. And the breathing is so important because the breathing optimizes, and again, I'm using that word, but what I mean is to say the breathing enhances everything that you're doing, physically. So, for instance, you ever seen a guy, maybe he's in great shape, he's running, and he gets a bad stitch in his side, right? Well, a stitch is an indication of poor breathing patterns. So a lot of people confuse that with muscle cramps. It is not a muscle cramp. I mean, it's a cramp of sorts, but the problem, it lies within poor breathing and a disconnection from breathing well, and potentially, over breathing or breathing through your mouth or doing different things. I mean, these things have to be assessed, but ultimately, it's from poor breathing. So our breathing optimizes our physical nature. So when you see the unification of all those things come together, let's say in like an Olympic sprinter, let's say like in a Usain Bolt or a decathlete, somebody who is using forward locomotion in everything they do. They're running, they're jumping, their breathing is absolutely on point with everything else. You know what I mean? So that to me is what I'm looking for, is sort of how do we, line it all up? And is there not a complete one size fits all, but is there a, sort of a form that everybody can kind of adapt to? Like, we know X, Y, and Z will get you strong. And if pretty much everybody does this, this will get you strong. Well, I'm looking at the overall, physical performance field. Like I'm interested in all of it, if that makes sense. And I do believe that we all have the potential, in the sense, if you have 2 arms, 2 legs, and you can do your thing. I mean, I feel like we all have the potential to be connected to this somehow. But I do think that, without being too abstract, I really believe that nature provides, and we've gotten away from it. And that's the simple nutshell sort of meme, if you will. We had it maybe, and we lost it, and maybe some people still have it. But I do think that, if you looked at my training as a whole, it's to get back to that.
Yeah. There's an interesting through line coming up for this workshop, and you more than touched on it. You hit the nail right on the head, right? It's resilience. That's the title of the workshop, resilience training. It's how do we become better able to adapt to and overcome the stresses that may present themselves out in life, right? You're spot on. You're speaking my language. The name of our first gym is Fortitude Strength, right? So fortitude, the ability to overcome adversity with grace and courage. It's seeing this thing, right? I mean, like, this looks difficult, this looks scary, it looks challenging, and approaching it anyway, even though you have those internal voices that are like, I don't know, man, you might fail, it might be too difficult. We approach it, we attack it, we make our best attempt, right? That's the courage piece. With this workshop, the other through line is going to be the breathing, right? All 3 of you heavily incorporate the breath work piece, and you more than anybody else, right? I think that you really help us lay the foundation to breathe well in the other guys' sections. You practice primarily and teach the Wim Hof method. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, it wasn't my first breathing system, okay, but it was because I had done others that I recognized the value in it.
Got it. What is 10,000 foot view? What is the Wim Hof method?
Well, the Wim Hof method, and I mean this as an overall whole, as opposed to just speaking about one component. There's 3 components. So you have breath work, and sometimes people get either just see it as the breath work, or they see it as the other one, which is the cold. So we have breath work, we have cold training, and then we have mindset training. And that's the three components of the Wim Hof method. So if you ask me, what is the Wim Hof method? Breathing, gradual exposure to cold, mindset training.
Got it.
And then, then you have each piece is its own closed loop, and then you're chaining them together in order to create a more robust, complete construct. Interestingly enough, they all absolutely work together, and in really unique ways, like more than just the surface of like, if you get in cold water, you need to control your breathing. There's some really interesting things that are going on in the Wim Hof method. Wim had the presence of mind to, sense it, to know it through feeling, through, he says all the time, feeling is understanding. And as far as his method is concerned, I absolutely believe that. Sometimes I don't believe your feelings are understanding. Sometimes I think people shouldn't base their lives around their feelings. But I do think that in the case of the Wim Hof method, it's an idea that you're communing with forces, like with a power, let's say the cold. And so you need to kind of shut up externally and go internal to really get the sense of that. And there's no language there. I mean, there is a language of mindset, but there's no language to really explain the way that you unify with that force. So it's just a very powerful sense, and you feel great after you do it. So Wim knew that, and he was like, yeah, I'll put this to science. Let's see what it's all about. And that's actually how it became a method. The reason it became a method was that he did all these things on his own, and he said, well, we're going to test it against the fire. And that was going into the lab and doing specific things, which we can get into if you want to. But the idea is that by testing it, proving his hypothesis in the lab, well, doing that and then teaching other people to be able to reproduce his results in an extremely short amount of time, like 4 days. Wow. So he was given, they were like, how long would you need to teach somebody to do what you do? A year? And he was like, no. And they were like, a month? He was like, give me 10 days. And 10 days turned into 4 days of training with him and 4 days of training on their own. And then they went into the lab and reproduced something really profound. So it just shows the power of our minds and our bodies and what we're capable of in the moment, to be right in the moment, connected to something. And this is how it became a method. And then I was lucky in that I met Wim at a time where he was just getting going. I became one of his first international instructors. I'm involved with the very first group of people that became instructors under Wim. And excuse me, the practice is powerful, man. I do it every day. I do breath work every single day, and we can get into all of that. But I just, I see it as a great tool for, again, self-defense. You are basically teaching yourself how to deal with internal invaders, like pathogen, for instance.
Let's get into it. The thing that share with everybody who's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. He taught other people how to do this thing and they had a good result. What were the results that he had achieved? And then over 8 days, he was able to reproduce.
So basically, Wim's whole thing is that, there's more inside you than maybe you think. So within this test, what he did was he went into a laboratory and they injected him as a part of a ongoing experiment where they had tested like 1,000+ people in the same way prior to him. And they had pretty much all had the same results. What they did was they gave these folks, women included, a injection of what's known as an endotoxin. Endotoxin, in his case, was this inert bacteria. So it was like your body would respond to it like it was an internal invader, like food poisoning. Okay, so you're going to get these effects. Basically, food poisoning is the same for most people. You have maybe some nausea and fever and so forth as your body is, creating what's been known lately and talked about a lot as the cytokine storm. This massive release of inflammation within the system. So you think of it like the body wants to, or the body quite often will overreact, overgive to destroy something, right? So if it's like dropping a nuclear bomb on an anthill, that idea of, and quite often that can lead to autoimmune dysfunction and things where the body goes off the rails, right? And it's no longer performing properly. So if you have overinflammation, well, so that was what everyone should experience, is this kind of rush of inflammation and, these markered effects. Wim went in, and obviously they're testing his blood. He basically, he got tested in every way that these other folks did. They had him on a table, hooked up to, I believe, brain scans, and he definitely had him, well supervised, and where they were really looking deeply at all his physiology. And he, I think he did 20 minutes of priming himself with breath work, and then they gave him the injection. And what it led to was seeing him basically perform in a way where his body only had about a 20% reaction, with compared to the other group. So his body barely produced any inflammation. It produced, if any, just the right amount. So you could say he's conditioned himself, toned his body in a way to where his body performs not outside of the realm of what is needed. So he's, his body just did what was needed, I guess, in a sense, and more or less, he had no responses, no fever, no nausea, no nothing that came along with it. And what he ended up feeling, he said, was a slight mild headache, but, nothing to worry about. And he went about his day. So what he did to prove that it was a science or a real method was, because, you could say, well, this guy's unique or something like that, was he took 12 guys who were untrained and basically trained them in the cold with the breathing, and had them go, basically through a blizzard up a large mountain in Poland, Mount Sznezga. They went to the to the top. There's a video of them all dancing at the top, up there. And they did this in very little clothing. So they did this hike in just shorts and boots, maybe a beanie, and but open shirt, no nothing covering the chest. And again, like I was saying, in shorts. And so the idea is the exposure to the cold and the power that it gives, and the conditioning that it gives to the internal senses. This created their resiliency to be able to go in and take on the challenge, but it was actually mitigating the responses with the breath practice. So the breath practice is this, you could say Wim controls the placebo effect in a way, like he really understands, but really what that means is that he has learned how to utilize his mind in a way where he can essentially create, or he can affect the internal conversation that's going on between, let's say the organs, the internal body, and the brain, the interoceptive conversation. He's influencing that, and he's influencing it by intention the correct intention, utilizing his breath to create an overall physiology that we can all do. So it's a physiology that was, that's the most important part. It's like, okay, so you do the breathing, you do 30 breaths, and we build up, we do a 30 breath round to a breath hold. Breath hold is very important. Then the breath hold, after we hold it as long as we can, we do a recovery breath, and that signals the end of the round, and we start over again. 30 breaths, breath hold, recovery breath. Very simple, Wim Hof method. Anybody can do it. When you're doing this breath at the particular cadence, you're trying to create, even though it's in a completely controlled and, let's say, calm way, you're trying to create the stress responses within your body. So you want your body's stress responses to kick on, and we're not trying to get them to kick on like right away. We don't want a massive adrenaline dump. What we're trying to do is build this up over the course of, say, 20 minutes. 20 to 25 minutes is optimal breathing time. And I really equate this breathing practice as like a cleansing practice. It's a great primer to, say, meditation or other things, because if you know this because you've done it, it's very engaging. So when you do it, you have to really take it on. It's not a question of, am I doing something? You're doing something. So when you get to the end of the practice, because you've blown off the CO2 as much as you have, and you've gone into the breath hold, and essentially the breath hold does all kinds of stuff, but we're training within hypoxic states, and we're affecting our vagus nerve, and that has a great profound effect overall on the whole body. But the vagus nerve, basically training that and ultimately, like I was saying, blowing off the CO2, we have this effect on the overall chemistry of the body. Our pH rises, and it rises in a profound way. We've seen it go up in numbers, and this might not seem like much of anything if I say we went from the normal state of 7.3 to 8, but that is extremely profound. So we raised our pH and showed that we can get it up to 8, or, in that area for a brief period. It spikes and then it comes back down. But this has a definitely has an overall effect on the body and inflammation. And so what we're doing is we're accessing our adrenaline through the adrenal axis, and we are suppressing the immune responses in the sense of the overreaction aspect of the immune responses. We're suppressing them to a degree. And this, what it does is it allows us to be calm. It allows us to feel a lot of pain relief, because pain relief is directly connected to all of this. And that pain relief also brings about senses of joy, because we're tapping endocannabinoids, we're tapping opioids. So we're literally, we're opening up the internal pharmacy, jamming the serotonin and the oxytocin and the dopamine. And so you're having this whole overall euphoria because of the practice. And so it's a pain suppressant. And what this does is it can, in Wim's mission, and I don't want to overstate this, but it can really help with depression, with mental states that are subpar, mental states that are not serving you. It really helps you to get out of your prefrontal cortex. It puts you into more of the primitive mind, which connects you deeper into your body and makes you feel more unified with your environment. In other words, you're not questioning so much, but you're really in the moment and you're sensing more of what's around you. And I think this is profound, and it's hard to explain until you do it for a little while. And then you put it with other stresses, i.e. the cold, and you can learn to use your breath in a way to where you are in a deep stress situation and experiencing the same state. So it allows you to go deeper into things that that are where resiliency is necessary.
Yeah, for the people listening, imagine that you have a habitually stressful situation, right? Something that happens in your daily life that constantly makes you physically and psychologically stressed out. Now imagine that you engage in a practice like this and you build that resilience and the capability. Uh, and then imagine that when that stressful situation happens, rather than starting to get stressed out and getting really short and choppy with your breath, it actually puts you into that parasympathetic state where you start to relax. And now this thing that used to be hyper stressful, that was trashing your system physically and psychologically, becomes a trigger for you to relax and for you to balance yourself out. That was something that Aaron put when I recorded the podcast with him about how cold water now triggers lower heart rate and slow breathing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's again stepping into stress for a little hormetic response, in order to have on the other side of it this great reward system. So, we can move forward, we can move back, or we can stay actually in the center, which is the freeze mode, where stress is building because you've got to make a call. But, moving back, you live to fight another day, but there's no benefit, really. You know what I mean? Like, there's really no benefit. Whereas we know that just by attempting things, there's a great reward system. But to actually accomplishing the things you're attempting for, it's a tremendous reward system. So, what the cold does is exactly what you said. You engage your sympathetic nervous system, and by engaging the sympathetic, you're getting these stress responses. But the stress responses are not going. You don't want to go overboard. That Wim's, one of his mantras is no force. So cultivate this practice. Cultivate it. And you can cultivate it quickly. It's not something that takes years in the cave to figure this out. You just do a few cold exposures, and then eventually you can withstand. You find like this is something I can do. I can handle this, and there's benefits to it. It might be challenging at first. It always is mentally challenging at first, but once you break through that and you go through the process, and you realize, like, well, let's say when you're a minute deep or 2 minutes deep in an ice bath, and you realize, I got this. I got this, and then everything just shifts with that mental understanding. I hear it physiologically when people do specific sighs, where they'll do something like, they'll just make that noise. I immediately know they're adapted, they're fine, they've really got it, and then you have to get out at some point because the cold will kill you. So you get out, and then you have this big shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic. And it's something that you can witness. And that is profound, because by actually seeing the shift occur, you realize, like, oh, I could probably do this in other aspects of my life. Like when stress comes up, I can probably make these shifts, and it's called adaptation. And that adaptation will lead you into another aspect of your nervous system, which will help you sustain yourself under the duress. So, stress is quite often perception oriented. You know what I mean? And when you can change that perception, albeit physically is the best way, because if you're no longer feeling the stress, then is it really stress anymore? You know what I mean? And I see this like with guys who train jiu-jitsu. You start in jiu-jitsu, and it's terrible at first, in the sense that, especially if you don't have a lot of physical acumen, you have somebody on top of you, they're trying to strangle you, and they're essentially trying to take your breath away from you, or break your joints or something. And it's like, what am I doing with myself? Why am I here? And, you question everything. But if you hang in there for a month or 2 or 3 or 6, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm starting to become the guy who does this to other people, and you realize, like, the perspective has shifted. Now, yes, you have some more physical skill, so that does shift the perspective, but the perspective of what you thought to where you are, when you look back on it, and this is in so many aspects of life, you go, man, wow, it really wasn't what I thought it was, and I overreacted. You know what I mean? And that overreaction is very similar to what I'm talking about physically, where, or, in the, the Wim Hof experiment, essentially inflammation occurs in all kinds of stuff, right? So we say when somebody's angry, they're inflamed, it's just this thing, or, it's just this thing where, it's been linked. Inflammation is linked to brain inflammation. I'm sorry. Inflammation is linked to depression through brain inflammation. And, there's just, I think you can find it in, at kind of at the root of everything, when we have issues, and our perspectives are no different.
That was a powerful statement. The word that kept coming up for me, not to oversimplify anything, was the fortitude piece. I mean, everything that you're saying lines up with like one of our core values, the name of the gym. It's your ability to overcome adversity. It's most of the time, my limited experience is it is more of the story that we create in our head about what the thing's going to be like than actually doing the thing. The ice bath is a perfect example. I've had people have conversations with me and come up to me who are like, you know what? I'm down to do this workshop, or I'd like to do this workshop, but do I have to do the ice bath part?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a piece of it, and the breath work and also the ice when doing it did two things. The one thing it did primarily, both of these did the same thing, rather. They have an excellent ability to bring you to the present moment. There's the old saying that that regret is caused from looking too far into the past, and anxiety is caused from looking too far into the future. Peace is in the present. If we're looking to get present, alleviate psychological stress, or maybe we've got some stories, some baggage that we're holding on to, getting present provides clarity. You want to get present, immerse yourself up to here in ice, and control your breathing. So there's the mindset piece, right? The mindset piece of the Wim Hof method. And that's something that we're very focused on, is helping people cultivate that mindset. That opportunity is presented by doing both of these things.
Absolutely.
The breathwork part, the other fun part about that is the internal pharmacy, right? I call it, what I tell people is it's like strapping yourself on a rocket ship to the moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that too. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, and you're 100% right. I mean, we are a walking chemical reaction. We are a walking pharmacy in that sense, because our experience is linked. I mean, I think it's more than what we know, but what we know right now is that the chemical reaction creates, our experience, right? And, this can be really profound. I mean, where in certain things, when like, if you're starving, the chemicals that take over, where you're no longer considering anything else but food. I mean, these are profound. It's a profound chemical reaction. If you're freezing in cold, there's going to be a profound reaction that occurs. And you're 100% right with what you're talking about in the present moment. As far as Wim is concerned, and since I teach his method, I just reference him. He spent years training in esoteric forms, the big one being yoga. So he is a very well-trained, very immersed yogi, and has been since he was a young man, and amazing skill. But he said it wasn't until he got into the cold that he really found his way of truly connecting and meditating with nature, where you can't run, you can't hide, you have to stay present. The more you drift off, the colder you're going to get. So you want to stay right in the center, and then you can actually generate tremendous amounts of warmth. And that's what most people don't get. You know, you can tell them that, and they won't really understand it, but it can happen for some people on the very first ice bath. The very first ice bath they take, they'll look at me and say, man, I'm warm. How is this happening? You know, that doesn't happen with everybody, but within a few, it will happen. Within a few, you'll start to have this sense of you know, you're a containment of heat. I mean, this is what we are, you know, and that heat can actually really, that fire, let's say, can be stoked. And the Wim Hof method was initially called inner fire. This is the practice that is, you know, this is how it was isolated, and it's based in this idea of Tumo, which the Wim Hof method is not Tumo, but there's a lot of similarity to it. And the Tumo practice is an ancient practice, yogic practice that traces back to the Tibetan mountains and or the Tibetan people in the Himalayan mountains, and they were essentially displaying all kinds of ability to create tremendous amounts of heat in the body, and doing things that, you know, would be seemingly impossible, like wrapping themselves in wet sheets and then sitting outside in snow and drying those wet sheets, you know. And this is something you could watch on YouTube. I mean, there's documentaries about these monks that have been studied. Interesting, really fascinating stuff. And Wim is tapping into that same source. I mean, he demonstrated being able to consciously raise his body heat while submerged in, you know, 32-degree water, freezing water. He was basically able to demonstrate consciously raising his body heat. This is something that we all have the ability to do, and thermogenesis is, in my opinion, one of the last really great frontiers of understanding physiology. And when you train it, you, again, will optimize your performances in so many ways. You know, a lot of people look at it as, oh, you do an ice bath to release inflammation. It's so much more profound than that. There are so many more reasons to train in the ice than just with that. And the ice bath is not something you have to do every single day. It has really long-lasting effects. So training in the ice can have effects for up to 6 days as far as inflammation is concerned and reduction. It also really gets at chronic pain, you know, not just acute pain, but chronic pain, long-lasting pain. And it changes your perception. So when you feel better because you spent time in the present moment, which isn't guaranteed. I mean, like, it's one of those things where it's very difficult to get into the present moment. But like you said, the breath work is a great way to do it. The cold is like, it's super passive. It's passive, but it's super intense. Yeah. So it's just this thing, just there, cold water, not threatening at all until you get in it. And then all of a sudden it becomes this, you know, your brain is going to say, maybe you're dying, you know, this and that. All this is occurring because your survival instincts are kicking on. But then you realize, I can control that. I can dictate that language. And, you know, and whether it be, and I believe it's a great tool to have, to isolate your language, train your language so it's there for you when you need it. But you can dictate and say to it in powerful words, no, you know, you're not running the show here. I'm running the show. And so all these voices you listen. And then they're quiet. And once they get quiet, then you are really, your eyes open, and you hear the external so much more. Your senses become really sharp. Everything sticks out to you, you know, and you're hearing your breathing, you're hearing your heartbeat, you're hearing all these things. And it's because the chatter is gone, you know? And so and that's just the beginning. I mean, that's really the beginning. Then it becomes like, well, what can I do here? You know, and that's a really powerful place to meditate. It's a really powerful place to, let's say, affirm different things, and to let yourself know that you're, you know, just on a base level that you're good. But then you can have some great conversations with yourself in those moments, man.
It is definitely a great place to be. It's, you know, in our overstressed, not to get too far into the weeds on it, but in our overstressed societies and our perceived overstress, right? Societies, our perception of stress, many people spend a lot of their time in that fight, flight, or freeze. They spend a lot of their time in that sympathetic nervous system where they think that they're going to die because of whatever stressful situation and all the hormones that are being released within their body. And to confront that and to stare it in the face and to be like, I'm going to be okay. I got this. I get through this. That, like you said, that there's no way, negation, acknowledge that can't bleed into everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it does. And that's the same thing. I mean, these things become your philosophies. You know, they become your, you know, it's, I mean, if you took these practices away from me, I don't know if I would know how to think as well. So they become ways to learn how to navigate all aspects of your life, you know, and when you really commit to a deep practice that's going to have a physiological effect, it releases so many things. So maybe it was a situation that you currently walked into that was just stressful all the time, but because you're just implementing these practices, take away all the thought of having to convince yourself of anything. You're just going to do these practices. Then you enter back into these stressful situations and you notice there's just no stress there anymore anyway. It's not that you had to overthink it. You don't have to consider it when you're in there. It's just your body doesn't feel what it used to feel. And now it feels something different. And that something different is a sense of empowerment and a sense of strength and fortitude and resilience and all the things that, you know, yeah, absolutely. We're orienting our workshop. You know, and the idea is that at the core, it's breathing. Because breathing is, when you're at your most stressed, going to become the thing that's your best tool. And, you know, in the moment, there's nothing better. A single breath can change so much. So it's how you breathe under stress. And then we lay out some awesome ways to train in that, and then try to give you the dialogue, to carry this with you, to keep reminding yourself. This is a huge part of the repetition. The repetition is to not just forget, oh, I had one great experience and now I'm I'm immune to all things. I mean, that's not the case. Every time I do an ice bath, I have to, you know, kind of go through steps where I tell myself different things and utilize my breathing. And, you know, it's not as hard as it was before, but it's still a process. And so you never lose that, you know, because you're going to change. Your bodies are going to change. You're going to get older. Things are going to happen. And the way to make it so that it's not in vain is to have momentum and to have, you know, this real, true sense of internal self, you know, that you can carry with you. I mean, I don't think that goes anywhere if you're training, if you're exercising it. You know what I mean? Like it's maybe the last thing to go. You know, so I really think it's the most important.
To get specific, to speak specifically, I'm interested in this workshop. It's all right. You're starting to pique my interest. What can I expect specifically from your sections? What will those look like?
They're very basic in the sense that we're going to hit all the fundamentals. So you're going to get the fundamentals of the breathing work. We look at the Wim Hof method, but then we add in other aspects of utilizing the breath in the moment. So the Wim Hof method is an isolated breath work training practice. What we're going to do within the workshop is really push it. So you're going to get a sense of, you're really going to get a sense of the true depth of the breathing practice so that you can carry that with you. So the breathing practice is hard to explain in just a few sentences because it hits you sideways. But when you're doing it, you'll know it's something, and it is profound. So we have the breathwork practice and breathwork protocols that we utilize, isolated practices and then in the moment practices. And then we'll have, and of course, that's all accompanied by music. And so we try to make it entertaining. We want people to really enjoy it. But then there's also the entrainment aspect of working with rhythm. Rhythm is really important in life and in momentum and in strategies. And, you want to understand and to be able to utilize your own internal rhythms. This is why some days it's better to train hard than others, right? You have these rhythms that occur, and the more that you can actually be a part of that conversation and feel what they are, as opposed to be dependent upon tech or some kind of exogenous source of something to tell you what to do, where you just have a better sense of yourself. This occurs by these awarenesses that are developed in breath practices. And then we have the cold training. And the cold training is what it is. You're getting in a cold bath and you're going to learn that you've got plenty of power, and then you're going to sense it. And maybe it's a novel thing. You do the cold and you get a sense of, this is something, and I'm never going to do this again, maybe. Or you're like me and you become a lifer. You know what I mean? Where you realize, like, this has so much power and potential. It's made me feel so good that how could I turn my back on it in that sense? You know what I mean? Especially if I was truly recommend, like, the ice bath is tremendous, but the best is to go take a long walk in nature, find a water hole out, that's out in nature, and get it. And that can be really mentally challenging for some people. But when you break through and you have these experiences where, you do something like that, it's hard to explain the profundity of it and the deep connection that you feel to everything. I mean, it is really profound, and so many cultures have known this throughout the years. So that's what I try to bring to the workshop is more the, setting a, like you said, an overall tone for how we're going to be dealing with stress throughout the whole workshop. And then you're reminded constantly. If you're working with Mark, he's going to tell you to breathe. He's going to show you where you should do it within the session, how to make it work when processing information. And then when you're with Aaron, under the stresses of training either martial arts or firearms or something like that, you're learning how to deal with this kind of deep survival stress in the moment, and we're reminding you to breathe and how to really engage your breathing in those moments. So I think what I bring is, like a foundation for the breathing, and then my beautiful side of the stress, which is the cold. That's my aspect of this workshop.
I like what I'm hearing so far. I'm not really sure. I'm on the fence. Maybe this is for me, maybe it's not. In your interpretation, with your, who would you like to see? Who would you say that this workshop is for? If I were to be showing up off of the street, how would I know that I want to be at this thing, or it's a good idea, or I'm ready, whatever, right?
Well, first you have to, I like to shoot people straight. It's about intention. So you need to be intended on the fact that the benefits always outweigh the work, right? So in other words, I don't expect you to have a lot of faith, but what I expect you to have is an actual understanding. So there's plenty of things to back up what we say. There's science out there. There's people who have gone through these training sessions that can give you all kinds of anecdotes. I've worked with thousands of people in relation to the work that I'm doing. So there are so many people that have done this and would tell you. I mean, you could read all the reviews that I've got about myself, and you could see that yes, there's something to this. Okay, but for me, I am the type of person that I want to dig in and feel it. And what we can offer you is something that, without a doubt, you're going to feel. You're going to know, and you're going to know you went through something. Retreats can often be a little bit of a stress themselves. You know what I mean? So just the idea of, okay, I'm going to commit, I'm going to go and be with a group of people, and maybe I know some, maybe I don't, maybe, this is a brand new thing for me. I've never done anything like this before in my life. Well, here's the challenge. The challenge is to step up and to say that, okay, I believe Cody. Cody is my coach, or maybe you believe me because you worked with me, or maybe it's Aaron, or maybe it's Mark or somebody. But, the point is that you have some faith in what we're saying. And that is the beginning. You have to kind of trust that, well, actually, let me back up. You have to trust that what we're doing is for your benefit. My goal is 100% to get people results. So this is, if you're going to have faith in me, you got to believe that I'm oriented towards getting people results, long-lasting results that are, skill-based, that you can carry with you. And that's one thing that you're going to gain from this, is multiple skill sets that you can actually tangibly carry away and continue to practice. And you'll learn it all within a very short amount of time. And that's what's so amazing about this type of training, is that it's going to come fast, it's going to come hard, but you're going to, really have something that you can walk away with. Not to mention, you're going to have a connection to a community of people that are engaged in this as well, and people who are looking for the same things that you're looking for. So I believe that within anything, you just have to take the step forward. If you're in the freeze place, remember this. Freeze is not the back end. It's not fight, flight, and freeze. It's fight and flight and freeze in the middle. Freeze is where we have to make our choice. Freeze is where, like you said, you have anxiety for the future, or maybe even depression for the past. And what's so important is that you realize that it's always in the present, that you're moving forward, but you're trying to maintain this perspective. And the forward movement is going to have a great reward system on the other side. So if you go forward, especially with the intention that I'm talking about, and when I say set the intention, what I mean is you've got to make the decision. I'm going to do this and I'm going to love it. And even if it's something you think you're not going to love, real discipline comes from doing the things that you don't like you love them, right? So, we enter into it because, look, there are so many people that talk about the benefits of all of this stuff. So we take that risk. I mean, if somebody told you, well, if I go and train with Cody, if you go and train with Cody, you're going to get strong. You have to just take that step and say, okay, well, I'm going to do the work, and now I'm going to train with Cody, and I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to get strong. And, this is the same thing we can offer it's just going to come at you at a very fast pace. So you have to be willing to, step in and take on the challenges. I mean, we're offering challenges that I believe can be accomplished by anybody. This workshop is for anybody in essence. You don't have to be a skilled martial artist. You don't have to be skilled with breathing techniques. You don't have to be skilled with anything. We're going to give you the foundations of all of these things, and give you a language orientation to where you can revisit all these things because you know what to say to yourself. You know how to basically reinvigorate this over and over and over again. And that's really what's important. I mean, life is simple in that way. Repetition is important. So going through the reps makes you strong, makes you resilient, gives you fortitude. And what we're offering is a way to step into that. We're offering you a way to really get a sense of what that means. And look, you could do it in 4 hours, or you could do it in multi-sessions. Multi-sessions is always going to be better. I offer a lot of retreats, and I also offer 4-hour workshops. In my 4-hour workshops, I can see amazing things happen, transformations and all this. But if you spend a couple of days with people, really learning, studying different things, being immersive, the transformation is tremendous. And it's something that you'll carry with you forever, which is why I know Cody is wanting to continue this on, because he had a direct experience and it touched him. And so now, here we are.
It's one of the questions that I've had from a couple people is, all right, why should I do it? And it's difficult to be one of those things that you put your thumb right on and you be like, you know what, you should do it for XYZ. So what I've really been telling people is, here's what we're going to get. You're going to get some breath work, language work. We're going to get there's going to be a fitness component. You'll be challenged. You'll get an opportunity to overcome adversity. And I can guarantee that you leave the weekend a different person than who came in Saturday morning. And I truly believe that you will leave better, right? As a better human being, you have more capacity, you have more knowledge. Aaron says that you're going to leave impacted. You're going to get that, and you're going to get the connection. The connection to you, the connection to Aaron, the connection to Mark in a pretty intimate setting. There's probably going to be 20 people. So you're going to get opportunity to learn from some of the best in the game at breath work, personal defense, story work. And very selfishly, there has never been, and I don't believe there will ever be, something like this workshop in small town Michigan, Southwest Michigan. Where my thing is, yeah,
absolutely.
My thing it's always, whenever I want to go to a workshop or a certification or something, it's hours of travel. Columbus is only 3 hours away, but there I asked myself, would it be possible? Could I bring something this awesome to a place like Coldwater? And the answer, thankfully, is yes. And we're rocking with it on August 7th and 8th.
Amazing.
Brandon, is there anything that you would like to leave the people listening with?
Well, I appreciate you having me on your podcast, man. It was great to talk to you and reconnect. And my thing is very simple, is that I believe the answers are simple quite often, and that it's the complexity of our way of thinking that makes them, bigger than they need to be. Our problems are bigger than they need to be, and so what we're trying to offer are simple, straightforward, very effective tools that help you not overcomplicate things, teach you that, that your solutions can be much more simple as long as you're engaged. It's quite often like you said, things not lining up. being too far back, too far forward without really being tethered to the present. So what we're trying to do is help people really get in their bodies and minds and get a sense of what it is to take on stress and have tools that work in the moment and are very, very simple and effective. And so this is, for me, I believe healing and growth and these things are simple, but I mean, we can complicate them. You know what I mean? Like, and, you know, for instance, maybe healing is simple, but medicine is complex, right? So I believe that the answers quite often can be found inside. I don't believe that all the answers can be, but I do believe that a lot of them can be. And, you know, what, if anything, that we're trying to do is help create more of an internal sense of trust. And that I think is tremendous. Like when you really need it. So that would be what I want to lead people with is, you know, that's where my training comes down to, is learning how to trust yourself more, learning how to engage, be in the moment, and ultimately overcome things that you thought previously you weren't able to do.
Sounds like as great a place to end as any. Brandon, I fully appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you for hopping on the podcast. Also, you know, thank you for coming in a couple weeks.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it. It's going to be a blast.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, feel free to drop us a message. Check out this podcast. We'll link some information about Brandon in it. And have a beautiful day. We will see you guys at the gyms.